Hey, third grade. I am super excited with the work that we did yesterday. I do want to point out, I did notice there were a few friends that started a fairy tale, like using, let's say, the gingerbread man or Billy Goat's Gruff or just a different fairy tale. And I just wanted to remind you guys before we dive in today and do like roll up our sleeves and really get to work on our draft process. We are all right now working on the Little Red Riding Hood and adapting Little Red Riding Hood. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not going to have an opportunity to do a different adaptation to a different fairy tale. Right now, we're all working towards Little Red Riding Hood. And then that's how we're going to get through all of our lessons and all of the pieces. And then once you guys are good to go, Mrs. Lutz and I will give you, free reign to pick your own fairy tale, do your own adaptations, and start one basically from start to finish. And you can, we can talk about that as we get there. But right now, you're all working on Little Red Riding Hood. I decided to do my model as Cinderella, an adaptation for Cinderella, because I wanted to give you guys the opportunity to come up with your own ideas for Little Red Riding Hood. And I didn't want my teacher sample to influence your own creativity. So that's the only reason why I'm doing Cinderella. But other than that, you guys are all working off of the base story as Little Red Riding Hood. Okay? All right. So today we are going to continue where we left off yesterday. Yesterday we did that voice to text, the speech to text feature in the notes, the bottom notes part, right? Let's see here. Close that. This section here, right? In our Google slideshow. Some people did really well with that. Some people struggled. That's okay. It's just a way for us to like sketch out our ideas. If we were in the classroom, yesterday's lesson would be more like get together with your partner and talk it out, like map out your scenes, act it out. But we weren't able to really do that because we're not in the classroom. So that's why we did some voice to text here yesterday. But you guys are going to use your voice to text if you have it. If not, don't worry. And we are going to transition that into starting our draft process. Okay. Now, I made like these scene cards. And here's mine for Cinderella. I did make one for Little Red Riding Hood that I'll show you in a minute. But what I did is I sketched out the entire Cinderella story in 3 scenes. And I sketched out my specific story. Excuse me. And then I added a 4th box called Final Words. We're going to talk about that today. So I want to share with you how I told this whole story in 3 pieces: beginning, middle, end. Okay. So scene 1, I have my goals here are to talk about my character, all my characters, what their interests are. And I put basketball and cheer, right? Cheerleading. I'm going to really drive home the point that Cinderella is like a servant in this house, and that this kind of ends with like there's this special invitation that came in the mail. And now I know, because I did my own planning, that this invitation is to go to the NBA, to watch an NBA game. Excuse me. So that's where I'm going to end scene 1. Scene 2, moving on. I'll back up a little bit so you guys can still see me. Scene 2, we'll do that, is Cinderella doing chores, right? She's crying because she can't go to the NBA game. All of a sudden, here's where the fairy godmother pops in, right? So the fairy godmother is going to help her get whatever she needs to make sure she gets to the NBA game, goes over the rules about like returning at a certain time, helps her, and then off she goes, okay? Scene 3 is at the NBA game, right? She has an opportunity to get the spotlight. Maybe she's going to shoot some free throws. I haven't really nailed that down just yet. But she has some kind of a spotlight moment, right? And then all of a sudden, clock hits. She's got hit her curfew. She's got to head back home, right? Misses a sneaker. Then all of a sudden, there's a huge search for this sneaker that she left behind, right? Oh, who does the sneaker belong to? This was our super fan, right? This person gets the prize for whatever that spotlight moment was. And then she ends up being found, and she gets season tickets to the NBA games. for the, let's say, the Knicks, the New York Knicks. So then I have this box here, final words. So when we talked about elements of a fairy tale, we all decided that fairy tales always have like a main lesson, or a theme that is like the driving point for why the story is being told. So for this Cinderella story, my final words are stay true to yourself, right? No matter what people are coming against you, stay true to yourself. So I wanted to make sure to add that into my 3 scene breakdown, so that when I'm writing, I make sure that I have this main message that's tying with me, right? Because there's going to be a lot of moments in the story Cinderella and also my story Cinderella that I have to like really show the hardships that she faced, right? And that it would have been so easy for her to like have a broken spirit, but she stayed true to herself even if people were not being kind to her. So I want to make sure that that theme plays throughout. Just to help you guys out, I did a quick sketch of the Little Red Riding Hood. This sketch is of the traditional story. It's not of your adaptations because I obviously can't sketch out all of your adaptations, but you guys can do this today. So, scene 1, off to grandma's house, trip through the woods, she's all by herself, right? Scene 2, bumps into the wolf, tells him where she's headed, continues on her journey. Scene 3, gets to grandma's house, all that stuff. My, oh my, your eyes are so big, right? The wolf eats her. There's a hunter that saves her and grandma. Final words, do not trust or talk to strangers. Okay? So that's just a quick snapshot for Little Red Riding Hood. But this planning, these squares will really help you in developing the 3 main parts of your story. So how are we going to take this and our notes and our slides and turn it into a draft? The thing that I want to like really drive home with you guys today is, we can absolutely do like a really rough, sloppy draft, but that means we're going to spend a lot of time editing and revising at the end. So what I want to do for you guys today is I really want you to focus your energy today on finding a balance of how much you're narrating the story. So how much of you as the author is just telling the story. Once upon a time, da, 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 right? How much of that is going on? Also description. So how many, like, it was a bright sunny morning, a beautiful blue dress, right? How much of you, how much of the story are you spending describing things? And then what dialogue do you have? Dialogue is usually one of those things that we forget about. And then either we totally forget about it or we have way too much and the whole entire scene is just this person talking and that person, and it becomes like a play, right? So there's a really fine balance between having the narrator speaking, having descriptions of the setting and what's going on, and also having some character dialogue. And what I want to show you guys today is I'm going to make myself smaller here, and I'm going to drop down over here. I want to show you guys just little clips from Cinderella. And obviously we're not, watching the movie, we're not reading the story, but if we just look at these scene clips, we can see, the emotions in our characters. We can see that, these sisters are, ripping things off of her dress, like really violently. You can see their facial expressions. You can see how horrified and upset and shocked Cinderella is, and how the stepmother is kind of like laughing and enjoying it in the background. So even just looking at this picture, I need to make sure that I portray these kinds of feelings in my own story, right? The sisters are just awful to her, the stepmom kind of encouraging it, and Cinderella horrified that people could be so cruel to her. Let's look at another scene. Okay, here's where her outfit totally shredded, right? She sees the fairy godmother. She's confused. She's like, who are you? You have a magic wand. Who's this lady in my backyard, right? All of that stuff. Then we go to this magical moment, right? So I can't just say, bippity boppity boo, you're on your way, go enjoy the game. I have to really describe this moment and all of the magic. Like, you can see in Cinderella's body language, her arms up are in the air. She's filled with amazement and wonder. So I need to make sure that I convey that. All right. Let's look at some others. Here's Cinderella's like moment in the spotlight where she meets the prince, and you can see all the other guests are looking, who's that girl? Who's that girl? Right? Everyone's talking. This is important. I need to make sure that I incorporate this into my story as well. So even though I'm adapting this story, I need to make sure all of these key components and all of these feelings, these little details in the background, they all connect to the bigger thing, right? So then when they're on the hunt for the glass slipper, or in my story, the sneaker, the basketball sneaker, everyone saw this spotlight moment. So everyone's like, oh man, who's that girl? Who's that girl? She's the talk of the town. So I need to make sure that I include that in my story too. And let's go here. Here was the glass slipper, right? Lots of smiles. Oh my goodness, here it is. This is it, right? And this is her like happily ever after. Everything's coming around full circle, no matter what, even though her sisters were so horrible to her and all of these circumstances, she found hope in the end, and, she came out on top. And stay true to yourself. So when I'm writing my first scene, right? My first scene is describing my characters, their interests, the basketball, the cheerleading, Cinderella as a servant, and the invitation. I need to make sure that I'm really portraying how horrible her sisters are. So I can do that with description, or I can do that with dialogue, like some attitude stuff being thrown in there from her sisters or from the stepmother. I also have to share this like excitement about this NBA invitation, and also convey how totally devastating that is to Cinderella. Okay. So here are my notes from yesterday. Let's just skim. The setting is in New York City. My main character is named Cinderella, right? Cinderella loves basketball and is a huge NBA fan. She is the type of, she's the type of person who is strong, athletic, and quick on her feet. Cinderella lives with her 2 stepsisters and her stepmother. Her stepsisters and her stepmother are not very kind to her. Her stepsisters are cheerleaders, and her stepmom also used to be a cheerleader. Cinderella is responsible for gathering all of the materials for all of the cheerleading practices. She gathers things like cheerleading uniforms, pom-poms, sneakers, and she also videotapes all of the cheerleading practices for her sisters. And then I'm just going to write invitation, because that's important to include in scene 1. That's it. These are really just notes for myself. So just kind of looking at this is all narration, right? This is all me telling the story from just me as the writer. It has no big descriptions. It has no dialogue. So I want to make sure that I fill my rough draft with as much of these like perfect fiction writing story elements and these craft moves as I can, because it's going to save me a lot of time in my drafting and my revising and editing in the end. So scene 1, fairy tales always start with what? Once upon a time, right? So I could say once upon a time in, so we know it's New York City. When I think about New York City, let's think about that setting for a second. It's loud, it's busy, there's hustle and bustle, right? So I'm going to I really want to use description here to describe the setting, right? It's not appropriate to do just like dialogue here. I have no characters yet, so I have to go with the description here. In the middle of the hustle and bustle of New York City, capital letters because it's a proper noun, right? Okay. There lived, here's the introduction to my characters. Who's my main character? A girl named Cinderella. Cinderella lived with her two stepsisters and her stepmother. Okay. Now, am I ready for dialogue yet? I introduced my characters, but I don't know anything about them. So I'm going to say no to dialogue. Maybe I need to continue like a blend of narration and a blend of description, right? I need to really describe their interest. So I'm going to jump down here a little bit. Cinderella is the kind of girl who is strong. Here's my description from below yesterday. Athletic and quick on her feet. She is, notice how I'm doing punctuation in capital letters, right? She is a huge, bold text, another craft move, NBA fan. Cinderella loves watching, let's see, any NBA game. Let's see. I want to like talk about how her stepsisters interrupt her like NBA watching stuff. So let's say when Cinderella is not watching her favorite team, the Knicks. Whoops. And it's another proper noun. Play. She is let's see, what kind of word can I use to describe that her, like she's like a servant? When Cinderella is not watching her favorite team, the Knicks, play, she is running around taking care of everything that her sisters need for cheerleading. Some might say that Cinderella is more of a servant than a sister. Okay, so you see how much writing I have here. I don't want to continue all of this writing, during this lesson because I know this video is getting a little bit long. But I'm going to continue this all the way until I get to the invitation part. So I can go through my notes on the bottom as I'm typing and I can say, okay, I did the setting in New York City. I did Cinderella. I did that she is athletic and NBA. She lives with her stepsisters. I didn't really touch on the fact that they're not kind yet. So I can delete all of that, but I'm going to keep the stuff about not kind. Her stepsisters are cheerleaders, and her stepmom also used to be a cheerleader. I did not touch on that. So I'm going to delete the sisters being the cheerleaders. And the stepmom, I got to leave that. Cinderella is responsible for getting all the materials ready for cheerleading. Yes, I said that. I didn't go into the details of things that she gathers, and I didn't get to the invitation yet. So here are the last remaining things that I have to touch on before I'm done with this scene. It looks like I narrowed things down to 1, 2, 3, 4 more pieces. Now, I took care of a lot with you guys today, right? There's a lot of my notes that I had in my bottom part of my slides that I was able to turn into like a really great first draft. So this takes work. It takes thinking. It takes planning, and you have to be thinking about those components. Narration, right? How much are you talking? Description. Are you describing things too much, too little, not enough? And also the third one is dialogue, right? People talking. I don't have any dialogue here yet at all. So for me as a writer, I'm going to challenge myself, hey, by the time I end scene 1, I need to have a little bit of dialogue. I need to at least throw something in there, right? It could be from the sisters, it could be from Cinderella, it could be from the stepmother, but I have to have some dialogue here before I end the scene. So your job today is to start going through and drafting each of your scenes. Ideally, my goal for you guys is to be able to do this to all three scenes. If you feel like you're running out of time, at the minimum today, everyone needs to finish at least your first scene. Okay. So there's no option of not doing it at all. And there's no option of like, well, I started scene one, but I didn't finish it. Finish at least one scene. Push yourself to try to finish all three. That's your goal today. Okay. If you guys want to, before you start, do your 4 boxes of your 3 scenes and your final words. This was really helpful for me. You guys can do that in a notebook. You can rewatch this video as many times as you need, and always, always reach out. I'm super excited to see how far you guys have come as writers. Don't forget your story elements, punctuation, capital letters. It's going to make your job so much easier at the end. Okay? I believe in you. Work hard. Bye, guys.